everyone, this is Beck from the Twisting Twine. Welcome to our video on how to single crochet. The materials that you'll need will be some yarn and a crochet hook. I'm using a chunky yarn and my crochet hook is a J size or 5.75 millimeters. Okay, step one is to create the slip knot. So arrange your yarn around your hook like this, draping that short end over the top of that main strand of yarn that you'll be using for your crochet. What we're going to do is then what we call a yarn over, which is essentially just latching onto the yarn with our hook and dragging it through that loop that we've created. So we're going to yarn over, latch onto that yarn, drag it through that created loop to give us a slip knot, which we can then loosen and tighten as we need to. Once you've done your slip knot, you're going to yarn over, which is basically grabbing with your hook that strand of yarn and dragging it through the loop that you've created, creating your first chain. Again, we're going to yarn over, drag it carefully through our loop, and then we have our second chain. It's got 1, 2. We'll keep going with the chaining process to make enough chain stitches for us to be able to really practice our single crochet stitch. So we just keep going with this process of yarn over, pull through that loop, yarn over, pull through the loop carefully each time. So we're just going to keep going with our chains until we get to 11 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, including the one on the hook. Okay, for the first single crochet stitch for this row, we're going to be putting our hook through the second chain from the crochet hook, and then we yarn over just like this, carefully dragging that yarn through that first loop or that first stitch we had on the hook. We then yarn over again and drag that through the 2 loops or the 2 stitches that were sitting on our crochet hook, and that's your first single crochet stitch. So for our next stitch, we're going to place our hook through the next chain just like this, yarn over and drag that yarn through that first loop, then yarn over again and carefully pull through the 2 loops or the 2 stitches that were sitting on our crochet hook. So we'll just continue going with, oh, not quite like that, into the next chain to do our next single crochet. So yarn over again, go through both of those loops there. Okay, as we come to the very last chain of our row, we're going to do our single crochet stitches as we have been. Yarn over and pull through, and then we're going to quickly just count what we've got. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches. So each time we do a row, we should have 9 stitches on our row. Now we're going to do 1 chain stitch, which is just the same as what we did at the beginning of our project. Turn our work so that we can start our next row. Now the first stitch of our next single crochet row, we're just going to have a quick look at the placement of where to put that first stitch. So different patterns describe different things. They will each stipulate what they want you to do pretty clearly. But I like to do my first single crochet in that stitch that's right next to the chain stitch that we've just done. So they are buddied up right next to each other. I find the edge stays nice and distinct for me. I'm less likely to have a wonky edge or miss a stitch in my own experience. So I like placing it there. If I was to put my single crochet in the next stitch over from that, so basically like the second stitch from the row, I find that my edge, my corner is not quite so distinct. It has a little bit of a curve to it, which I just don't really like. So I always like to do that first single crochet for the row in that stitch that is directly next to my chain. Okay, so we'll just real quickly redo that first couple of stitches on that row to get my nice distinct edge that I like. And then we'll continue with single crochet in each of these stitches for the remainder of the row. So just being nice and careful when we're both pushing our hook through that we get it through both of those loops for each stitch, And then sometimes, depending on the yarn you're using, it can be a little tricky. You might snag a little strand as you're bringing your hook back through. So just doing it nice and careful and repeating that single crochet in each of those stitches all the way till the end of your row. Okay, as we get to the end of the row, coming up to our last stitch, you remember from the previous row how we'd done a chain stitch before we started the row that we're currently in. So now we're actually pushing our hook through that chain stitch, and this becomes that last stitch for this row. So as you can see, we've carefully pushed it through, making sure we've got it through both of those hook loops, and then we just do a normal single crochet, and then we count to make sure that we've still got our 9 stitches once we get to the end of our row. And this is sort of what it should look like. So you should have that nice distinct corners on both of your ends. After you've done a few more rows of single crochet in your sample piece, you should have something that kind of resembles this. You've got your single crochet stitches that you can easily count across the top, and you've got nice distinct edges as well. You haven't added stitches and sort of gone out in a wonky line on the side or on this side, and you also haven't gone inwards by losing stitches either, and you haven't lost those distinct edges. Thank you for watching this video on how to single crochet. Head over to the Twisting Twine blog for more single crochet patterns and crochet ideas. Happy crocheting!